How difficult has it been to buy an existing home here lately? Well, if you're like some of my clients, you've begun to think about maybe getting land outside of town. Maybe you could build your dream home. Some of you maybe grew up in rural areas, or you were an Austinite way back when, and maybe you want to get back to a simpler way of life. And like myself at times, some of my most fun childhood memories of growing up on 86 acres are playing in the woods and riding horses, running through the fields barefoot, falling in the biggest ant mound ever, or at least it seemed that way when I was 6 years old, but can't give you that fun story right now. In this video, I'm going to address what you need to know if you're looking at land. My name is Susanna Gentry, your Austin, Texas Realtor here with Tuesday's Tips. And be sure to stay to the end of this video because I'm going to share the best thing you can do if you are considering buying land. And if you haven't already, would love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It'll be linked below the video. And right off the bat, let me just tell you that land is not a quick flip. In my opinion, you should really only plan to buy land if you're going to hold on to it for maybe 10 to 20 years, because the value is definitely not going to rise as quickly as you've seen Austin real estate do, as in land with a home on it. So the next thing I want to address is the mineral rights and leases, because I've just experienced this with a client this month. And we'll be closing on a gorgeous 27 acres this week, but it was a very complicated process. I would guess that most people, when they're out land shopping, you're looking around, you would not think of mineral rights. I mean, what the heck is mineral rights or a lien against it? But did you know that in Texas, the surface of the land and the underground or the mineral estate can be separate? One person can own the surface of the land, and another person or multiples of persons can have the rights to use the minerals underneath the property. And would you even have guessed that the mineral right owners are the dominant estate, or, in easy terms, they have the first rights. They can use the surface land that maybe you're looking at buying to come onto the property. They can explore for oil and gas using trucks or other methods. They can make roads or dig wells or pipelines or pits wherever they choose on your land, or a dozen other things, as long as it's deemed reasonable means. Well, and who decides that, So just make a mental note that mineral rights can be more valuable than the property. And if you'd like to learn more about this, I have a link to this real estate publication that will give you all those details. So the next thing I want you to be aware of are land leases. And it's really pretty common for rural properties to have farm or hunting leases. And I probably would not recommend that you assume someone else's lease. It's probably just better to allow them to be terminated prior to purchasing or closing. And if you wanted to re-sign with that person after the close, you could always do so with your own lease and terms. So how about accessibility? Obviously, I'm sure that getting to your property whenever you want is pretty important, right? So you want to really assess the condition of the road, or if there is a road leading up to it. For instance, if it rained, would you be able to drive your vehicle on it? If you're a city slicker, teasing about that, you might not know that county roads have a much higher risk of flooding because there's fewer requirements for making these roads or maintaining them. Or, how about the neighbor that has to cross your property just to get to theirs? This is a real thing. And if this is the case, you'd really want to make sure that there was a deeded easement. And I've known of people that have temporarily lost the access to their property until they reach an agreement. And this can really get tied up or take some time in court. So next, one of the biggies, in my opinion, is the utilities. It's so important to know where your power is coming from and who the provider is. Some properties may be lucky enough to have public water, but if not, you would want to know how deep of a well would be needed. This can cost, $10,000 or more dollars. And for more on this, watch a video that I did last year on wanting land near Austin, and I'll make sure that I link it in the notes below. And you always want to check on your septic system, the cost. You really need to have a perk test done by a septic engineer, and they'll decide what kind of system you can use. There's different types of septic systems, and this engineer is going to measure how absorbent the soil is, if it's rock or what's going on with it. And sometimes you can't even have a septic tank on the land. And if this was the case, you wouldn't even be able to build your home, or maybe not even get a mortgage. Next, where and how the lot is positioned. Just a couple weeks ago, I was showing my clients on an absolutely beautiful 2.7 acre piece of land that looked like a dream come true. But when you do further digging, you learn that the owner on one side of you has chipped into your potential lot line to create their own backyard. And so they had actually built on the back side of the lot, which means that unless you want them looking in the back door or windows, now you have to move to the other side of this potential lot, given that the septic system would be agreeable with this. But then even learn that the landowner on the other side of you is on this side of their lot and in the front. So making you choose between a rock and a hard place if you actually wanted privacy that you thought would be simple to achieve with a 2.7 acre lot. If you want land to build where you have privacy and not hear everything your neighbors are saying when they're having a fight, or the moral of this story is to do lots of due diligence or digging in. Another note is the neighbors. If you think you might ever borrow a cup of sugar, or maybe want a tractor to move some hay, or something like this, you probably want to know more about your potential neighbors. Like my clients, you might find out that they're in a feud with the neighbors on the other side of your lot. Most likely you're not going to know much about your neighbors by the time you would purchase your property, unless you're super smart like one of my clients and do a lot of research. But look at maybe how their property is kept. You could even think of making a visit before you buy. Just ask these neighbors about the property and what they might know about it. Hopefully they're very sweet and tell you lots of stuff. So, all right, next is property use and restrictions. Is your property going to be a future home? Are you going to build? Or is it just a place to hunt or get away from the city? If it's a future home site, you really need to consider some of the extras, like how close are you to the grocery store? How about the schools? Or how can you use the property? Or, what are the restrictions? You need to understand these. And for example, if you wanted to have a gun range for target practice, you need to have a minimum of 10 acres. The most common restrictions I see are no mobile homes, no junkyards or commercial businesses, but there are other restrictions. And again, take a look at my previous video that I'll have linked to show you more on that topic. Okay, next, survey. This is one of my best tips for you. Make sure you have a copy of the survey when you go out to look at this piece of land. And you'll want to inspect the boundaries. You look for possible encroachments and maybe fencing that's not on the boundary line. By the way, fencing is rarely perfectly on the line, and sometimes if you're looking at the actual survey, you notice that there's a road built over the edge of your potential piece of land. I've had this happen with a client before. It sure does bring up a lot of extras and digging to find out that the road has been there for 25 years and it is not going to be torn up or moved for you. So, sometimes you may want to fix a boundary line, or sometimes you'll choose whether it's good for you to accept it as is or not. So the survey is just going to verify the actual amount of land that you're buying. And the title company is always going to require a survey in order to close. Okay, earlier in the video, I promised you the best thing you can do if you want to buy land is, here's my top tip, pay cash if possible. If you're not going to build a home on your land right away, these lenders often see you as a risk, and you have to pay 30 to 50% up front is what I've been finding. If not, some of them even require full price. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed and found this information helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, this is Susanna Gentry with Tuesday's Tips. See you guys next week.